everybody? It's your 5-star realtor, Joshua Ingram, partnered with Page Property Team, brokered by EXP. We're on another episode of the Dream Builders Podcast, where our mission is to help buyers, sellers, agents, small businesses, and nonprofits connect with the resources and knowledge to achieve their goals. We have a special guest with JCVision Associates, the testing coordinator, James Lewis Jr. How you doing,
I'm
James?
Good. How you doing? Thank you for having me.
James.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm
For
doing
sure.
well.
And it's a special month this month, being that it's the Fair Housing Month for JCVision,
That is correct. That was actually Fair Housing Month for the entire United States. So you're correct, but
yeah,
it is Fair Housing Month, in which we always have a way bigger focus on fair housing due to the fact that one of the biggest proponents of fair housing came from Dr. Martin Luther King.
Okay.
So therefore, in remembrance of the assassination that happened in 1968 in April, therefore we decide, or the government has decided to honor the entire month as Fair Housing Month.
Yeah, and I can't forget my team leader partner, Bradford Page with Page Property
Hey, Joshua.
Team.
All right.
Okay, so let's get it kicked off, James.
Okay.
The testing, Fair Housing testing coordinator. So, can you tell us about your role in the Fair Housing testing coordinator with JCVision and Associates and how it aligns with your organization mission?
Yes. Okay. So, my role as a testing coordinator is to try to find a way to remake scenarios in where we found that there's elements of discrimination that may have happened by a housing provider and a tenant. So for example, we could have a tenant come in and give us a statement of allegations of what they felt they were discriminated by. Mm-hmm. And what we will do is I will then find 2 other people who are similarly situated and try to recreate that same scenario to see if it happens again. Mm-hmm. And therefore to create a pattern and practice, then to submit that entire situation, including the original submission of the person that brought this into our attention and what we actually had in our findings to be able to present to HUD and let them perform a formal federal investigation.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so how does the fair housing testing, how do y'all conduct the test for the potential discrimination happening in the market today?
Great question. And the best way to answer that is we have it 2 different ways. You have it to where you could do what we may call market testing, mm-hmm. which is I can just maybe just close my eyes and find a location that was in my service area and pick it and say, all right, we're going to test it just because we just want to see if they're doing everything right. Yeah. Therefore, there are other times, though, however, where you could come into my office and say you felt that you've been discriminated against. And therefore, again, now that's complaint based. That has come off of me actually feeling like or filing a complaint with HUD or see that the elements can be based off of standing jurisdiction and timeliness. Therefore, I then can take that same scenario in which you felt that you've been discriminated by, recreate it with 2 other individuals and see if it happens again, or to see if something else comes from that situation once we send the testing out.
Wow. How long have you been doing this for?
6 years.
6 years.
Yes. Well, actually, I'll be honest. It is actually 5 years and some change. It'll be 6 years exactly in September of this year.
For sure. And I believe the organization been in existence for what, 25 years?
25 years.
It was
25 years as of March 25th of 2024.
Yeah, a day before my mother's birthday.
Which is very ironic, very ironic. So it's easy to remember if you've been there long enough,
That's awesome.
Because when someone asks that one, he's
So someone asked me that, how do you remember that? I said, well, other than doing our training sessions and where we will actually bring in people to train them in how to be secret shoppers in the housing industry, when we do that, we actually have a training module where there are we give our background of JCVision and where you'll see how this was started in 2021 in March 25th.
Yeah, Hinesville, Georgia.
It started over with your mom and dad's retirement plan, the 401k plan, and therefore from that, they decided to bring this into an organization and where it's standing now, 24 years later.
Helping people. And so, can you, from your experience, right, James?
Okay.
What are some key challenges and barriers that individuals face when it comes to accessing their fair housing opportunities?
Some of the key challenges I will have to say is, and I learned this when I first started working with JCVision Associates. I went to a speaking event and a guy, he came to me and he asked what I did and everything. And so therefore, and once I explained it to him, he was like, so you basically are the person that knows the rules of the game. So, and I asked what he meant by that, and he said, once you know the rules to a game, you know actually how to play the game. Are you correct? I said, yeah. So he said, you know how the rules of how to play football. You know if you hold this guy's jersey, that's holding. Yeah. That's a rule to a game. Mm-hmm. The issue, one of the biggest barriers that we come across here in fair housing is the fact that a lot of tenants don't know the rules to the game, i.e. they don't know just simple laws that govern their state. Mm-hmm. And every state has different laws, but at the same time, you'd be surprised at how many of these states here in America, their laws when it comes to housing they mimic each other. Yeah. And as a fair housing counselor, that is one of the biggest job things that you have to make sure that you are aware of is the fact that the state where you're operating in, this tenant landlord laws. Yeah. As an example. And a lot of people will realize that, for example, once you know those laws by itself, it would be, you make yourself a stronger tenant, not only for yourself, but for the housing provider where you're staying at. Mm-hmm. Because the more knowledgeable you are, you're not only protecting your rights, but you're protecting that property where you're renting at until you become a homeowner yourself. Yeah. So that's one of the biggest barriers is not people not knowing their rules and regulations of simple laws. Like there's a one-time legal tender here in the state of Georgia that I'm not a lawyer, but just because of being able to be blessed enough to work with other lawyers and them being willing to teach, you pick up on certain things, and you pick up on the fact that the first time if you wanted to take me to court to evict me and it was over non-payment of rent, and I show within a certain time frame by that filing time frame that I can't produce the rent, it's automatically dismissed for the very first time in the state of Georgia, as an example. Wow. So things like that is what we at JCVision also try to do is we don't teach law, we don't practice law, if anything like that, but we try to make sure we point you in the direction of where the education is to educate yourself to make you a stronger tenant and just a stronger citizen.
For sure, for sure. And being that y'all have been an organization in Hinesville for so long, how does your organization collaborate with local organizations to bring awareness for the fair housing awareness?
The best way to collaborate that I've learned in my experience here is that you got to get out on the ground. Mm-hmm. You got to get out and you have to find the resources that people should have available. And what happened was, I'll give you a prime example. When I first started working here, there were places where people were coming to me saying, I need this help here and I need help here. I said, why don't you go to this place and go to this? And the number one thing that people always say is, I never heard of this place. I didn't know it exists. You know that old adage, if I had a quarter for every time I heard a certain thing, you'd be rich. Yeah. Well, I started hearing that and I'm like, you know what?
It's inflation though, so it might be $1 for
good point. It's just the fact that once I started catching on to that was becoming a very repetitive thing, it stated that your mom and I sat down one day and we said, we're going to make a list ourselves. So we called around different organizations, different apartment complexes and things of that nature. Hey, which one of you all take subsidies, for example? We made a list of that. Which one of you all do this? We made a list of that, and we just comprised a list year after year. And then we started also realizing that there are other resources of agencies, state governed, that will allow you, they'll help you with rental assistance, help you with utility assistance. Wow. In order to do so, you do have to fill out an application and things of such, and to make sure to show that you qualify for it or whatnot. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it does help you stabilize in order to make sure that you then, once you get that assistance, that you can continue on from that point without having to get any other type of assistance in the future. Or if need be, you know where you can come to and come again if you meet the ramifications of that program. Yeah. So a lot of local agencies in counties and cities will have like homeless prevention programs and things of that nature, or even a shelter sometimes, but mainly homeless prevention programs, which will allow you to pay back your arrearage to the landlord or the housing provider. Mm. At the same time, they look at your finances and see that, or they should be seeing how you got into that situation. Mm-hmm. Because it's one thing to just throw a Band-Aid at something and say, here's the money and fix it, when then you don't really find out how did you get in that situation, and how can you make sure you put around the proper ramifications or parameters to not get in that same situation again. Mm-hmm. We all have life things happen, especially when the job markets have crashed and things of that nature. COVID that came, a lot of those things became an issue, but also at the same time, we still like, for example, your mom implemented a budget program with us to where any client that comes in our office and we sign them up as a client, we also have to go through a budget in order to discuss their needs and wants. And you'd be surprised, you're telling individuals that sometimes maybe older than you that you have to remind them that no, you wanting a home with 4 bedrooms so you can have one for a man cave is more of a want, not a need. When it's just you and your 2 children. And then when you take away 1 bedroom, you get bumped down into an amount to where you can't afford. Simple barrier of knowing the 30% rule, to knowing that it's easy for you before you go and put these magazines here. Every single one of these could be an application, all $65 a piece. Well, you can minimize that to maybe 1 application altogether if you know that 30% of your income that goes towards rent. This would be the only place that you really can afford at that time. You've now just helped yourself by this many times of not paying that extra $65 for an application in order to be denied.
And the time to do it.
All that you now can mitigate to knowing exactly where you stand. And you can minimize that, and it can help speed up your process.
So you really focus on being a resource for people with housing needs, and a resource of educating them.
Yes.
And so when you throw the flag when somebody is holding, and what happens with all that, and do they get educated too? So I know a lot of times a landlord, we have a property investment group, which we'd love to have you come up and talk at sometime.
Okay.
Landlords sometimes, they're one-offs, or they get 2 or 3 properties. They know it's a good way to build up a residual income so that they can retire appropriately. And, they don't always have the education to really understand what the do's and don'ts and how you can do things the right way. We like to all think that we're ethical and we treat people all the same, but there are little things that we may not understand. So you provide that as well?
Yes, we do. As a part of the statement of work in which your mom created, we're deemed a housing counseling agency approved by HUD, Department of Housing and Urban Development, and also a part of that in that statement of work, we do a thing called education and outreach.
Okay.
So there are times where we will find public events. We will create our own events. Like for the month of April, every month, JCVision will find a way to host a fair housing event like this of such, or maybe a public event to where we can find a way to educate the public and in our service areas. And we also remind them, we give out lists of resources that they may not know of that just came up to existence and not even been published yet.
Yeah, because that offensive lineman who's caught for holding, he doesn't get thrown out of the game.
Right.
He just gets a penalty.
Right.
But if he does it too often, he's too egregious, and you know what? He's sitting out.
Well, what you do is you find out is an example that you're giving, which I love, is the fact that, okay, you have the offensive lineman. He's actually performing the holding. However, don't you know it would be the coach more as
or the owners,
as the owner. Yeah. So he's only, as the offensive lineman, representing you as the owner.
Right.
So it behooves the owner to know the rules of the game more than the offensive lineman does. Yeah. Should both of you know? Yes. But if anything, you should know because of the fact he is only just acting in proximity of you.
Right.
So whatever violations he actually does, it's actually saying that you did those violations as well.
Understood.
So that's what happens when we throw the flag, and then therefore a lot of times HUD, you have so many different phases of HUD when you actually file a fair housing complaint, for example. And in one of those phases, if you make it to an investigation standpoint, what happens is once the investigator contacts the complainant and the respondents, the next thing they do is they stop and say, I myself as the investigator or another person is going to contact you to come up with a conciliation.
Okay.
And in conciliation is where you'll say, okay, what would it take for you to feel that you've been justified in, and at the same time we make sure that we hold the housing provider at some type of punishment. Mm-hmm. And usually that punishment is just in training. Yeah. We make sure that they get the proper fair housing training, 40 hours minimum, from a FIP like ourselves or someone else in their area to make sure they are getting education on the protected classes that HUD governs by. To get the education of knowing what you should and should not do, and make sure you understand what is the least non-discriminatory effect. Okay. As in, you can do all of this to evict someone, and it can be a part of the governing laws in that state. However, if anything else, especially while you're receiving federal funds, what could you have also done to mitigate this before getting to this level and creating more homelessness? Right. Is what we try to educate people, housing providers and tenants, on, because it's a contract that you make. And in that contract, you as a housing provider is saying that I will perform these tasks, and one, providing you a home that's going to be free and safe of repair and sanitation. Myself as a tenant is promising that I'm going to take care of your home while making these payments as if this was my own.
Yeah, I love
There
that
becomes a
education
divide
part
in
of
that.
it. I really
It's
love
very
that.
important. It's very important. It is very important.
There's
because
bad actors on both sides.
It is. It is.
But this gives them an opportunity to grow and learn
And
from it.
education also brings in accountability.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
It really does. And it also, it puts you in a standpoint that you may not be able to be in a standpoint of owning a home right now. But the certain small things that you do as a renter, you will be surprised how they will correlate to when you become a homeowner.
Yeah.
The only difference is there's no one to call for maintenance at that time, is you are the maintenance person. But you'll know how to handle that.
And I know Joshua's got more questions, but I got one on one.
No, you're
Go
good,
for
you're
it. Go
good,
for
yeah.
it.
Not in the list. So I'm looking at, you got people going out to do testing.
Yes,
So
sir.
I'm sure there's people out there right now saying, "Oh, how do I get that gig? You know, how is this something I might be interested in doing? Is there, maybe I got a part-time job. I'm trying to make ends meet. Is this a way to supplement that income while providing a great service to the community?"
That is it. You know what? I have to take that exact statement from you and use on our next flyer because
No
that's
charge.
no charge. I appreciate it. Because of the fact that's exactly how we advertise. We advertise it as supplemental income. It is nothing that's promised like you're going to be getting a full-time job off of, even though there are some agencies that hire testers as full-time.
Right.
And in our standpoint, we hire you as performance-based for each assignment that we will compensate you on. And it is for the fact is we put the spin on that though you're making supplemental income, you're also helping provide relief to the public and where you're residing.
Right.
Not only for yourself and your neighbors, but also in the future for your children, your nieces, nephews, so on and so forth. Because if we catch them in the covert or overt discrimination or bad practices now, that can be corrected now.
Right.
Therefore, your children won't have this issue to deal with.
Yes,
when
you're
they
making
become
a
adult.
difference.
Exactly. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way, but if you have to have a certain kind of heart for it in order to, because you have, for every 10 bad cases you deal with, it's that one that reminds you to keep doing what you're doing because of the fact it is a need.
Yeah, and you don't want to go in there in an adversarial role anyway. You're going in there to provide a service.
Correct. It is. I've noticed it does help to kind of have somewhat of an adversarial perspective.
Okay. Yeah.
But still remind yourself that this is a service.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome, Jane. That's awesome. So,
I appreciate it.
What advice would you give an individual who believes they may have experienced housing discrimination, and how can they seek assistance or support JCVision and Associates?
The biggest advice I can give you is to contact JCVision and Associates, and we can tell you everything about your situation, or if anything else, we can get you directed to the right location. I like how one time before, a couple attorneys, they referred to us as shepherds because of the fact that if you look at it, we kind of help. We will sit from the time frame of, if you would have came in my office and said you're facing an eviction, my first step is to find out, number one, what is happening with that eviction, why you're facing that, but two, to get in and make sure you answer the dispossessory warrant correctly. Because when I first started working here, there were times where some courts were not allowing you a day in court, even if you said you agreed or accepted the ramifications and allegations that were brought before you for an eviction. So if I took Josh to court, for example, said he didn't pay rent, he did a lease violation, I called him smoking on the property. And if Josh just went in and said, I accept that, yes, I did do that, there are some courts at one point in time, because we were not present there at that time, they were just saying, well, if you accepted it, I'm not about to have a court date. You said you did it, so we're just going to go through with the eviction already. Come to find out, that's actually, some people that don't know, that's against your constitutional right. It doesn't matter what you say on there. You due process, you are owed that day in court. Things like that is what this organization began to
It probably
start
wouldn't
doing.
work to your favor if you said you did it, though. That would probably come up.
It does not, however, to be surprising. Because, of course, TV and things of that nature, Black Robe is just some stalling person that just is one way or no way.
They're human beings.
They're human beings, and they have bigger hearts than you believe.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and you'd be surprised, even in the blessing of working in the different courts I've been able to experience, you will see, especially a judge who know they can't give legal advice, will find a way to still and indirectly give you legal advice because they know that what's happening is not right.
Right.
And that is very commendable, and where, especially now where they don't have to do that. They say, hey, you know what? You need to go contact JCVision. And we'll get courts that will refer cases to us in order to try to help them out and get back in front of that situation. And then the homelessness never happens.
Wow. 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 And James, just thank you so much for this interview. It's amazing hearing about JCVision right now. So I'll finally leave you off with this. Is how can the viewers support the work of JCVision Associates in promoting the fair housing and equal access housing opportunity for all residents?
The biggest thing I would say, if you would like to help JCVision out with doing anything in the service that we do, donations. But knowing that you're doing donations that are going to go towards civil rights. You're helping out with the act of civil rights and showing that you're giving organizations like us, which are nonprofit, more resources and more ways to be able to get out there and do more than what we're already doing.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing is the donations, the knowing that you're giving a donation for civil rights, but also just referring to us to know when we can help you out, especially here in the city of Savannah. We have give you an example, we have a contract or a partnership with Allison Slagowitz, attorney Allison Slagowitz, whom she has a contract with the city of Savannah in where she is a civil rights attorney, or she delves in civil rights where we can refer cases to her. And it has been a very blessing because she started off with Georgia Legal Services, and where we built that relationship in order to be able to help fight a lot more cases. And where we found out a lot of things were going on, she came in on board with that. She became such a great teacher that when she started her own law firm, she got this contract with the city of Savannah. So what we do at JCVision Associates, we have a partnership with her. Therefore, we refer cases to her in order to help here in the Savannah area.
Which brings up another question before we wrap
you
things
got
up. So the business is located in Hinesville.
Yes, sir. Our main headquarters.
What areas do you service?
We actually service 11 different service areas.
Okay.
Which is, you'll basically just say anything under Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
So anything under the Macon line all the way down to the Florida line.
Okay.
Is what we do. So you have Savannah, all the counties of Savannah, Hinesville. We also have Wayne County, which would be Jessup. We have Ludwig, which would be Long County. Then we also have McIntosh, Glenn County, and Camden. We just actually picked up Camden, and now we're starting to expand out westward. We've gotten Tatnall and a few other counties.
So if somebody reached out to you in Hinesville and they're in Savannah, you come and meet them?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We'll come and meet them, but of course, thankfully, COVID actually started making us be a lot more innovative when it comes to things like that. So because of technology, now we have a way of streamlining. If you call me from Savannah, the first thing I can do is I can see you a packet that you can fill out online. Once you fill that online, our executive administrator, she will sit there and divvy it up to us, or she'll give it to Mrs. Ingram. Mrs. Ingram gives us our cases, and therefore we go forth that way.
Unless you've hit that age cutoff where they don't do online, or they don't.
Yes, I understand. Yes,
Zoom is a foreign
there are
language
times. Yes, sir. You're so very right. There are
So-
times some that are not tech savvy, and if we do pick up on that, we will. Especially our executive administrator, she'll call me sometimes and say, "Hey, you need to put this one in the mail and do it the old school way because they're not as tech savvy." Only thing I'll say is, "Yes, ma'am." Or there are times we've even delivered them to the front door just to make sure that they get it filled out.
Awesome. Well, a lot of good information.
Yes.
For sure. So James, how can the viewers get in contact with you?
Okay, so the best ways to get in contact with us is 912-877-4243. That is JCVision Associates. You can Google us. You can look up anything like a certified fair housing counselor. Our organization will be listed as well because we have 3 certified fair housing counselors at JCVision Associates. And of course, we have all our social media platforms. We are on Facebook. And so therefore, especially with that question you asked earlier about testers and secret shopping, if you go on the JCVision Facebook website, you'll be able to see there's a link where you'll be able to fill out an application. And then once you fill out an application, I will be notified, and then I will give you the different dates of training and where I teach a class along with my coworkers, and where we teach our class and to explain to you who we are, what we do, what the testing program is and what we expect of it and what you as a tester should expect from us as testing coordinators.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, James.
Thank you for having me, man. I appreciate
Lewis
it.
Jr.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Fair Housing Testing Coordinator with JCVision and Associates. And let me remind you that this podcast is sponsored by Page Properties Team, TheDream E.N.T, Real Estate for a Reason, and make real estate fun again. Thank you so much, James.
Thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Definitely a lot of facts.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
A lot of facts. And remember, also want to thank KGCI Real Estate on Air for collaborating with the Dream Builders podcast, where our podcasts actually go nationally to educate the community as a whole. Again, if you want more information, get in contact with us. Hope you have a wonderful day, a fantastic week, and remember to always attack it with greatness. God bless, and I'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank y'all.
Peace.
Bye now.